brings up the aspect of hospitality. Because how you're treated affects the way that you view something, or a place, or the people, or the attitude, or the atmosphere, and all those types of things. The hospitality that is extended to you or not extended to you makes a difference. It's probably, and this is just Joe talking, guys, it's probably one of the biggest failures that I've seen in churches since I've been a pastor, which hasn't been that long. I mean, I've been doing this 15, 16 years now, but you know, the lack of hospitality toward other people is so important that we don't fall into those traps. There was a man that wanted to go to a little small Midwestern town, and he had a little business meeting to go to, and so he emails this little hotel, and he emails them and he says this. He said, I would like very much to bring my dog with me to stay at the night at your hotel. He's well-groomed, well-behaved. Would you be willing to permit me to keep him in my room with me at night? Well, not too long later, he gets a reply back from the hotel, and the reply says this. It says, Sir, I've been operating this hotel for many years. In all that time, I've never had a dog steal the towels, sheets, silverware, or pictures off the wall. I've never had to evict a dog in the middle of the night because for being drunk and disorderly, and I've never had a dog run out on a hotel bill. Yes, indeed, your dog is welcome at my hotel. And if your dog will vouch for you, you're welcome to stay here too. You see, hospitality makes a difference, doesn't it? The way you respond to people, the way we treat other people. It makes a difference in just the attitude of the atmosphere around us. I remember years ago, my first college experience, my first semester, I went to a community college in Rockville, Maryland, and one of the classes I took was salesmanship. And I'll never forget the professor told us, is when you go into any situation, you are usually the one that sets the atmosphere for how it will unfold. And I thought about that, and I've remembered that for years. And it's so true. If you go into something with a haphazard attitude or your negativism and whatever, your indifference, then that's usually the way things are going to play out. But the way that we go into something, the atmosphere or the attitude that we bring with us, usually is the way things play out. I'm going to tell you a few stories today, a few experiences. And years ago, when Darcy and I first moved to Caledonia, down by Grand Rapids, we were church hunting. And I remember Brightside Church, the one on the East Beltline, straight down. Anyway, it was actually it wasn't a small church, but it was kind of in an industrial park. And it was called Brightside Church. And I remember the advertisements that they had. And one Sunday we decided that we would go there and check this out. We see it advertised, we're looking for a church, so we go there. And it didn't look like a church setting at all. Because like I said, it was kind of an industrial building in an industrial park. And it was large. And we got there early enough to look around a bit. And we were looking there to see what kind of offerings they had. What kind of things do they have here at this church? Is there kids programs? Are there small groups? What type of ministries are they involved with? All those types of things. Well, did they look organized and so forth? Well, it was obvious after looking around a little bit that it was a very modern, new, fresh church start. And it looked really good. I remember the service started and was quite impressed with the music. The pastor delivered a great message, and everything was really good. But we didn't feel welcome. You know why? Nobody ever said anything to us. Nobody ever said, how you doing today? Nobody ever invited us to return. Nobody even sat near where we were. I remember that specifically. You see, I think, and I'm not saying this to be negative, but we get so used to what we're used to. And here's somebody new, and nobody sat near us. I remember feeling very awkward with that. Well, the other thing was nobody noticed when we left. We just left. But there was a glimmer of hope. About 2 weeks later, we got a postcard in the mail that told us what the new sermon series was going to be all about. And that was it. We never heard from them again. Well, it was sometime later. Again, we're still church shopping and so forth. And I don't remember what the situation was, but I had to stay home. And Darsh, you went to Cornerstone down in Grand Rapids. And I remember when she came home from the church service, she said it was almost like they were talking right to her. She had such a good and warm feeling about this church when she went there and talked about how it was invitational, it was open, it was fresh, it was something that made her feel comfortable. Well, okay, I'm excited. I'm ready to go too. So the next week we went together, and I remember one of the things I immediately noticed when we pulled into the parking, this was a larger church down in Grand Rapids. When we pulled into the parking lot, there were more cars parked at the outskirts of the parking lot than up front by the church. You see, the people that were there, the people that were regulars there, wanted to make space and room for all the new people or whoever was coming to visit, or what they wanted to be as convenient as possible. It was part of their attitude of hospitality at this church. I remember walking in the front doors. I remember being greeted, a handshake. I remember someone offering us a bulletin. I remember somebody asking, saying, do you need directions? Do you know where the restrooms are? Do you know where to take the kids? And it was very hospitable. I remember going into the sanctuary there, and I remember sitting down and with no pressure. I remember this individual came up with a smile on the face and said, "How you doing today? My name is so-and-so." Didn't come up and say, "Are you new here? Or are you just, none of that stuff." No, it's just, "Hi, I'm so-and-so." Yeah. That happens, doesn't it? But it was a very open and a very invitational thing that took place. They made us feel welcome and comfortable because that was their hospitality attitude that they had ingrained in the people in this church. It was how they felt about people. They were grateful that we were here. They were glad that there was someone here that they hadn't met before. And you know what? At the end of the service, I didn't see the little cliques, the little groups that always gather together in the same place with the same cups of coffee, talking about the same stuff week after week after week. Not that that's bad. Don't get the wrong idea. What I'm saying is that their overall attitude was one of hospitality and invitation. Their overall attitude was one that they were interested in you. They were glad that you were there. It was a beautiful thing. Scripture tells us, and this comes out of the book of Hebrews, chapter 13, verse 2, very obscure verse that we've all heard, but nobody ever remembers. "Do not forget to entertain strangers, for by doing so, some people have entertained angels unaware." Think about it. That's what I want to talk about today. This attitude of opening our lives, ourselves, to other people. You see, hospitality is more than just a tea party, so to speak. It's more than a business convention where you have hospitality suites. It's more than, a group that regularly gathers together. It's more than even just the ushers at a church for the week. Hospitality goes much further than that. Hospitality, Scripture teaches us. And this is not me, this is the Scriptures telling us. Hospitality is a spiritual discipline. It is part of the spiritual discipline that you and I are called to ingrain in each one of our lives. It's a biblical obligation, Scripture tells us. We are instructed to be hospitable toward other people. The Bible also says that this attitude of hospitality to the Christian is just as important as prayer. I was surprised when I read that. It says this attitude of hospitality is just as important as your own personal spiritual journey. As you read Scripture, as you learn and you study and you attend Bible studies and all those wonderful things, they're saying that this attitude of hospitality is just as important as that. And then the one that really blew me away was it says that this attitude of hospitality is just as important as your worship. You know, we all know one of the major aspects of the reason the church exists is to bring glory and honor to God. It also says that it is to be hospitable toward other people so that we might show others the glory of God through ourselves, through our own personalities, our own interactions with others, our own relationships with people. That we would show others that we are just as interested in them, just like God is interested in them. Scripture also teaches us that hospitality is really a vibrant expression of your Christian faith. To be hospitable toward other people is a declaration of who you are in your spiritual journey. Hospitality, friends, is an atmosphere. It's an absolute atmosphere. It's in the air around us. It's in our attitude toward other people. Hospitality is the way that we engage other people, the excitement that we show them for whatever it is that we're talking about, or different aspects of our church or our ministry or things of that nature. Be hospitable just overflows from people. It's not an obligation. It's not just something that I sign up for to do, once a month or whatever, and okay, I'm going to greet people today. Well, welcome to here. No. That's a great way to chase people away, honestly. Because that's what we experienced at Brightside Church. And that's what we experience at many other churches. That's what I'm sure many of you have experienced at places too. Not just church, but other places where you gather with people. You can tell, you can sense whether or not you're wanted and you're valued and you make a difference or not. Really. It's all about the atmosphere that you bring with you. Bring it with you. It's that simple. We get so used to the things that we were used to and the way we want to, come on. When was the last time that we honestly put in the forefront of our mind how somebody might be received? We see somebody new, and it's not just a church. Maybe it's in another setting. And it's like, do I value this person? Do you see the other people? The other person is a child of God, just like you are. You know what I mean? We need to think about that. Unfortunately, we live in a culture of fear today. We put dogs in the yard and double locks on the doors. We install elaborate alarms on our houses and cars now. Airports are surrounded by security. Safety officials all over the place. Military. We train children to be aware of strangers. We're reluctant to stop and help a stranded motorist. And we need to be smart. Absolutely. It's a broken in a world that we can get into trouble real quick with out there. Because there are predators and people that don't respect others. And it seems like the more things we accumulate, the higher the risk that we're going to end up being robbed or aggressed against. The truth is, the less we come to know the people around us, the less we learn to trust, the more isolated we become. And certainly the media and the movies, they haven't done us any favors there either. Because they're always promoting ways to get your engagement, to fear, scare, whatever it takes. How much fear can we endure and still function as loving creatures, as loving Christians? How much of that can we take? Has fear kind of frozen us somewhat? Has it caused in us this desire not to be hospitable toward people? Are we so defensive now that being hospitable toward others is out of the question? Think about it. What happens when we isolate ourselves to that degree? We fail. You see, the church is called to be a place where the church is called to be a safe place. This should be a safe haven. This should be a place where you can go and in the Christian community that we know each other and we can express to each other where we're really at. It's not just like, Monday morning you walk into work, hey, how are you? How was your weekend? All great. Everything's cool. The church should be a place where you can say, you know what? I'm struggling a little bit today. And you should be able to do that in complete safety. We should be able to do that because we know that the other person cares. That's part of hospitality too. It's not just being open and welcoming and, everything's wonderful and rosy. Part of hospitality is also creating a safe environment so that people can be people. We can be open and honest with each other. There's some examples in Scripture. Abram and Sarah, when they were told about her pregnancy, Abram had camped at a place called Mamre. And there he sees some strangers far off. And he goes to them and he invites them to come up and stay with him. He invites them to sit down and he gives them water and bread and some of the finest beef that he had. He shares with them. He didn't know them, but he was demonstrating the hospitality of God. And of course they told him that they were sent as messengers from God. And they tell him about the pending pregnancy with the son that's going to be coming. His name is Isaac, and he's been long awaited, and God has heard your prayers. There's another instance in Scripture that talks about the widow of Zarephath, where this prophet, Elijah, Old Testament prophet Elijah, he goes to this town and he finds this woman who's destitute. She has nothing. She's gathering sticks to prepare her last meal when Elijah meets her. And yet she demonstrates hospitality. She invites him to come share the last meal with them. Talk about going out and over and above. She didn't realize that he was a prophet of God. She didn't realize that this man would eventually save her and her son, even after the son died, that he could bring her back to life. But she demonstrated this radical hospitality. And don't forget the story about the walk to Emmaus, when the couple of the disciples are walking along the road and they see this stranger and they invite the stranger into the conversation. And, later on they find out that it was Jesus, the resurrected Christ. Don't forget to entertain strangers, for by so doing, some have entertained angels unaware. Such important words that we need to hold on to. They need to be part of the mantra that we live by every single day. Anybody recognize this guy? Thomas Jefferson. When Thomas Jefferson was president, true story by the way, Jefferson and his entourage were on horseback and they were traveling somewhere and they came to a river. And the river was at flood stage. So it was kind of hard to get across. But it wasn't deep enough and it wasn't rushing enough that they couldn't get across on horseback. Well, also on the shore of that river was a man who was journeying but on foot. So he asked Jefferson to give him a ride on the back of his horse across the river, which Jefferson did. Reached his hand down, said, sure, get up. Helps the guy get on the back of the horse, and they go across the river. And when they got across to the other side, some of the people that were traveling with Jefferson, one of them scolded the man and said, how dare you ask the President of the United States for a ride? And this is what the guy said. He said, he said, look, I did not know that he was the president of the United States. He said, I only know that some people have yes faces and some people have no faces. He has a yes face. See, it's that attitude of hospitality. It's that atmosphere that we bring with us into any situation. Any situation. I challenge you, next time you go to Meijer, look at the cashier and say, man, I hope your day is great today. What's going on in your world, or something. Just be nice, be hospitable, open with a kind word. Hospitality is an atmosphere. From the parking lot to the pew, all the way in any congregation or any church. That's what I know, I believe, that we want to build here in this congregation. Is a church that will be known for its radical hospitality. Radical hospitality. I know that this is a welcoming congregation. There's no doubt in my mind. But we can always improve. We can always do things differently and better sometimes. And sometimes we need to take a good hard look at where we're at and what is it that we can do differently. And prayerfully go before God and say, Lord, what is it that you would have us do different? What is it that you would have us that would help us to represent you better than maybe what we're doing? And then extend that to the grocery stores, to the bank, to the neighborhoods, to our workplaces, to the McDonald's drive-thru. I've got one last story I want to tell you about today. One last story. A nurse took this tired and anxious serviceman to the bedside. Your son is here, she said to the old man laying in the bed. And she had to repeat the words several times before the patient's eyes actually opened. Heavily sedated because of the pain of his heart attack, he dimly saw the young uniformed Marine standing outside of the oxygen tent, and he reached out his hand. The Marine wrapped his fingers around the old man's limp ones, squeezing a message of love and encouragement. The nurse brought a chair so that the Marine could sit by the bedside, and all through the night, the young Marine sat there in the poorly lighted ward, holding the old man's hand and offering him words of love and strength. Occasionally, the nurse suggested that the Marine maybe move away and rest a little bit, take a little bit of a break, but the Marine refused. And whenever the nurse came into the ward, the Marine was oblivious to her and all the night noises and the clanking of the oxygen tanks and the laughter of the staff in the hallway. Now and then she heard him say a few gentle words to the old dying man. And the dying man said nothing. He only held tightly to his son all through the night. Along towards dawn, the old man died. And the Marine released the now lifeless hand that he'd been holding. And he went to tell the nurse. And while she did what she had to do, he patiently waited. And finally she returned, and she started to offer words of sympathy. But the Marine interrupted her. He said, "Who was that man?" And the nurse was startled. She said, "It was your father." He said, "No, he wasn't." He said, "I never saw him before in my life." And she said, "Well, why didn't you say something when I took you to him?" And he said, "I knew right away that there had been a mistake. But I also knew that he needed his son. And his son wasn't there." That is radical hospitality, friends. I don't know the origins of that story, but it certainly demonstrates radical hospitality. Here's some more radical hospitality right here. It just doesn't get any deeper than this. It just doesn't. that God would come into the world? Really? A world that he knew would reject him? That he would suffer all of the things that he had to suffer with as he lived a perfect life here in this world? You talk about being hospitable toward humankind? Talk about an example for us? Come on. And then to go to a cross. And if you've ever studied or read about the horrors of what that execution must have been like, I just cannot begin to fathom the reasoning behind why God would do it, other than the depth of just unbelievable love. You see, this table is all about radical hospitality. He does not invite us here simply to give and say, take. He also says, accept what I'm calling you to do. And that is to be radically hospitable toward all people. All people. The ones that you like, the ones that you don't like, the ones that you agree with, the ones that you don't agree with. It doesn't make any difference. Open your life and your heart to the people that I have gifted you with in your lifetime. Open your life and your heart radically and open yourself to the people that I've created, because they're all the same. We are all the same. Created in the image of God, but all fallen so short. So the night that he was betrayed, he took bread and he broke it. And he said, this is my body, which will be broken for you. He said, it'll be broken for you because you have a problem that you can't fix on your own. And the problem is one of sin. And you can't fix it. But I can. And then he took the cup and he said, this is the cup of my blood. The blood of a new and an everlasting covenant. New and everlasting covenant. And he says, it will be spilled for you and for all people. Again, the ones that you like, the ones that you don't like, the ones that you agree with, the ones that you don't, it doesn't make any difference. That is radical hospitality. When you consider the welfare of other people far above yourself. That's what he's saying. He says, I do this for you, so that you might have the opportunity to come to me, to live in eternity with me, in the place that I've always intended you to be. That's what I want. That's what I'm calling you to. Friends, I'll invite you to come forward for a time of communion. And then I'll also invite you to go back and sit down and have a short conversation with God about hospitality in your own life and what it is that he's calling you to do. How is he calling you to be? What does he want you to do? So the table is set. I invite you to come forward. And if you can't come forward, you know what? I'll come to you.